Good evening. I would like, oh, it's a little loud, sorry. I would like to call the Monday, May 16th meeting of the Wilson School Board to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Here.
Mrs. Casper?
Here.
Dr. Kennedy? Here. Mr. Martin?
Here.
Mr. McCray?
Here.
Mr. Negrini?
Here.
Mr. Schneider?
Here.
Mrs. Cocker?
Here.
9 present, 0 absent.
Please stand for the posting of the colors.
Ma'am, permission to post colors.
Please post the colors.
Post colors. Break side. Off.
To the flag of the United States of America
right, face. Forward, march.
Okay, thank you to our JROTC. First, we have communications, a presentation for Super Nikki. So, Mrs. Troutman.
Good evening. I am very pleased tonight to introduce Mr. Joe Palumbo, who is the director of the Grandview Gallery, for a special presentation. As you may already know, on Wednesday, May 4th, at the opening of our high school art show, a special dedication was held to honor the memory of a fallen classmate. In January 2004, Nikki Overman, a beloved Lincoln Park Elementary School 6th grade student, passed away from surgical complications. To honor Nikki, in May of 2004, a superhero mural was created on the grounds of Lincoln Park Elementary School. Mr. Palumbo and a team of former Wilson students and staff worked together to preserve the mural for future generations to enjoy. Tonight, Mr. Palumbo will be sharing more about the story of Super Nikki and officially presenting one of his recreations to the Wilson School District. Thank you to Joe, not only for your work on this project, but for all you do to honor the arts here at Wilson. Mr. Joe Palumbo.
Hello. First, thank you for having me. Thank you everyone for coming out. It's a very special project. I was asked to recreate this back in October. At the time, it was just like, we need to figure out how to do this. And the idea came up with, we create 2 paintings. One of them goes to the family, which I did the background and did the outlining of superheroes, and then her classmates painted them, just like we did back in 2004. And then I created one myself, which is the one you see here, which I'm donating to Shiloh. It's special because it really shows how we come together as a community, as Wilson, as the arts. So it's been a bit of an emotional week. Everyone's been contacting me since this whole thing happened, and it's been very special. And I think there was a film component that was brought up too. At first, it was just going to be like, we're all going to say some really nice things and present it, but I wanted to create something that anybody who didn't know the story could watch and get the whole story, the big picture. So I created the documentary film Super Nikki, A Story of Kindness, and through that, got to tell her story, tell the story of what we did back in '04 and what we did now. And we picked Shiloh because 2 of her teachers currently work there, Stephen Strobel, Sharon Hill. And we just thought it was a really nice place to start. The nice thing about this is it's not going to fade, it's not out in the weather, it won't get destroyed. So this really could move wherever we want it to go down the road as well. So I'm just really honored to be able to do that for her and for the family and for the community. If anybody hasn't seen the film, I really encourage it. I think it really shows the best of what we do here at Wilson. I really do believe that. So thank you for having me. Thank you for accepting this at Shiloh. I'd like to call up Principal Dr. Byrne to formally accept it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the work. It's beautiful. We feel very privileged to be able to have this in our home at Shiloh Hills. It'll be on display for all the students to see, right near the art room with Mr. Carr, and Mr. Strobel's right upstairs as well. So I know he was a big part of Nikki's world too. So thank you so much, Joe, for your work, and I feel very privileged to accept this donation. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for that. And our next communication piece is the proposed final general fund budget presentation. Dr. Trickett?
Yes, Ms. Schlossman will now come up to the podium to take us through the proposed final budget presentation. While she's doing that, I just wanted to take a minute to thank Joe and the entire team for honoring Nikki's legacy. It's very obvious that she was an incredible human being and impacted the lives of not only you, but many other people that were in attendance the other day, and I'm sure many others. People like you said, and the people that you surround yourself with are really what make this community special. Continuing to honor someone long after their passing is a testament to you and the entire team of artists and people that worked on this. So thank you so much on behalf of the district. Christine.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight we are going to review the proposed final budget for the general fund for the 22-23 school year. Before we get started, I just want to thank everyone for spending countless hours on this budget. We started in October of 2021, and the district leadership administration, the building administration, department chairs, department administrators, finance office staff, and of course the finance committee of the board and the entire school board has worked very hard on the review and development of this budget, and I just want to express my thanks. So we want to start out with talking a little bit about the Snapshot of Wilson. Empowering our students to create their own future is our mission, and we have some little factoids here for us to review quickly. The number of employees at Wilson School District is 1,084. Our current student enrollment is 6,324. We operate our own transportation fleet, which we are one of 2 districts in the county that still do that. We transport 3,808 students, and we have 71 vehicles in our fleet. We serve lunches every day to the tune of 5,648, and we serve 2,843 breakfasts every day. We have a wonderful music and theater program with 7 productions and 28 concerts on an annual basis. We deploy 6,409 one-to-one devices throughout the district. We have 35 high school athletic teams, 27 middle school athletic teams, and we maintain property acreage of 270.92 acres and square footage in our buildings of 1,414,175 square feet. So we also want to talk about the student body at Wilson School District and the composition of that before we get into the dollars. So you can see here on this chart how our student enrollment has grown over the years. You can see we have grown 350 students, or 5.9% over the past 5 years, or an average of 70 additional students per year. The light bar on the right-hand side is the projected growth for 22-23 based on a third-party demographer analysis. When we look at our student growth compared to our peers in Berks County over the last 3 years, the source of this data is Forecast 5, which takes the data submitted to PDE and puts it all together for comparative purposes. So we can see in this chart that year over year, Wilson has had growth more than the other districts. So if we just look at 19 to 20, we were the only school district that experienced growth. And from 19 to 2021, so over that COVID period, we were only one of 4 that had enrollment growth, with the other school districts staying consistent or losing students. Our low-income student population has also grown to 2,305 as of the date of submission to PDE this past year. That represents 36% of Wilson's total student population. If we look back to October of 2016 at 1,768 students, that represented 30% of our total population. So you can see overall a 5-year growth of 537 students in that particular graphic. English language learners have grown also tremendously in our school district. 137 students, or 92% over the last 5 years, with a total of 286 students reported to PDE this past October. Our special education student enrollment has also grown, as you can see here on this chart, by 215 students to 1,238 students, or 21% over the last 5 years. Students who have left our district but reside in our district and attend charter school or cyber charter school for the most part. You can see the trends here. During the height of the pandemic, in the hybrid year of 2020-21, we saw the biggest increase of 46% in average enrollment. You can see, based on efforts that the district has done to bring those families back into our district, we've realized an 11% decrease in that charter school enrollment, and we continue to try to get those students back. Our Berks Career and Technology Center enrollment is shown here. We have a budgeted 117 students to attend next year. That's based on a 3-year rolling average that the BCTC calculates. So Wilson students attending BCTC represent 7.8% for non-special education students and 7.143% for special education students of the 16 sending districts to that facility. So that's a backdrop of our student population. And now we're going to get into the budget itself. This is the calendar that we have been working on. So today we're here to vote on the proposed final budget. June 20th will be the board adoption of the final budget. So between now and then, changes can still be made to this budget. So here's the overall picture for 22-23 budget. Total revenues of $120.9 million, total expenditures of $125.9 million, for a deficit of $5 million. We take out the contingency for budgetary reserve, which is in the budget just to protect the district from unforeseen expenditures. Then we need to budget to cover the budget deficit of $4 million, which we are covering with our committed fund balance in this particular budget. You can see how that compares to the current budget that we're in. Revenues are increased by $5 million, or 4.3%. Expenditures are increased by $6 million, or 5%, with a change in the overall deficit of $1 million. We'll first look at the breakdown of expenditures in this budget. We can see salary and benefits is the biggest part of that, $96.5 million, a $5.3 million increase, or 5.8%. Other non-personnel personnel costs are everything else that the district does other than personnel. So that includes our transportation fuel, our supplies, our support services throughout the entire district. That is actually going down by $200,000, and that is based on cuts throughout the various departments, offset by net increases in cyber charter school, virtual academy, BCTC tuition. Anything that happens to be increasing, we cut to cover those increases, and then even some more. The debt service of $10.9 million is our annual run rate to pay off our current debt. That has not changed. It stays the same throughout the life of the debt. So we have total expenditures before the phase-in and budgetary reserve of $123.4 million. We then go to the phase-in of additional staff. That is money that we started setting aside last year, or the current year we're in, $600,000. This budget has $1.5 million, or an increase of $900,000. And what that represents is looking at our projected enrollment and what we would need to staff to cover those classrooms for the class sizes that the board is looking to maintain. and just to deal with the overall enrollment growth of students. So total expenditures of $125.9 million, $6 million increase, or 5%. This is the breakdown. You can see salary and benefits represent 77% of our total expenditures, with other non-personnel costs at 13%, debt at 8%, and the phase-in and reserve at 1% each. Salaries and benefits are shown here, broken apart. For 22-23 proposed final budget, the total is $96.5 million, which we saw in a previous slide. The red part of the bar is the benefits and the blue is the salaries. And just to note that because of PSERS and other increases, our benefits have actually outpaced the increase in salary. So benefits have increased 110% over the last 10 years, and salaries have increased 45% over the same period. You can see the PSERS rates on this chart. We're still increasing as the projections show. It's leveling out, but it's still going up, unfortunately. So that is a big part of our projected increases in benefits. So part of the salary increases in our budget include mid-year additions and adjustments that occurred in the current year as a response to what we were seeing in the post-COVID educational environment. And these positions listed here were added. They were paid for by the ESSER federal funding monies. Those funds will cover the majority of these positions for next year as well. However, this will be a point of considerable review as those federal funds fall off in the year after next year. We will have to determine to reassess the needs for these positions and how they will serve the district. This list is the proposed new staffing additions included in this budget. There were many positions that were requested and reviewed, and these were the positions that were prioritized to be included in this budget, as you can see listed there. Special education and support services are always a challenge in the school system. The total bar of all of the different colors there totals $25.7 million, which is what we're budgeting for special education, both instructional and support services, as listed in the narrative on the bottom of that slide. Just to point out, when we look at the years that are shown there, in 2013-14, the local taxpayer burden was 78% of those costs, and now we've reached 82% as the local burden for those costs. You can see the dark blue portion of the bars are the state and federal subsidy that supports those costs. Charter school tuition is shown here. You can see, as we talked about the enrollment, how 2021 spiked up due to the increase in enrollment. Like I said, we have come down in the enrollment for the current year. However, the tuition rate also goes up every year. I know the governor has proposed doing some reform in this area, which will be very welcomed. So in order to try to keep our students here who may not be able to participate in the in-person learning that we provide, we have a Wilson Virtual Academy. This slide just kind of goes over how many students we've seen, what we're projecting for next year, and the overall third-party content provider cost in both of those years. Interesting to note that when we ran the scenario of all these students went to cyber charter school and not attended Wilson Virtual Academy, it would have cost the district another $2 million. So this is a vital piece of our educational program. And then overall, just to sum up, the expenditure side of the budget, This is a chart that shows the Wilson School District average spending per student versus our Berks County School District peers. Wilson is the red bar, and the rest of the county is the blue. So for 2020, we were under the county average at $16,956 per student versus the average of $18,260 spent per student. And now transitioning to revenues. Our revenues are listed there. Local, $88.2 million, state, $29.2 million, federal, $3.4, and other of $0.1, for a total overall increase of $5 million, or 4.3%. What is included, which we will see in a few slides, is a 4.2% increase in the millage rate, which is our adjusted Act 1 index for Wilson. There's also state revenue increases. The gaming revenue was actually fully funded for next year and certified by the state. What that translates to is the homestead amount that's listed on a taxpayer's bill, who is a homestead or farmstead owner, will see some additional relief versus the same relief you've seen for 15 years. So that was a welcome change for our taxpayers. Well, whether or not that can be sustained in the future is unknown at this point. The governor also proposed that Wilson would receive $4 million of funding in his budget proposal. As we are aware, the state budget has not yet been passed. Hopefully it will be before we have to pass our final budget. So at this point, we've included 25% of his proposal, or $1 million. The federal ESSER and ARP ESSER money is being phased out as we are spending that down for the most part in this year, with a little for the year after that. So our components, you can see there as a percentage of total. Local is 73% of our revenues. The state is 24%, and the federal is 3%. Our assessment growth has a lot to do with our local tax revenue line as well. You can see here that we have enjoyed a growth spurt in this particular year as we're looking to project out for June 22. It includes growth of 2.5%, net of appeals of 1.1%. Overall, over the past 5 years, we've grown about 0.7%. This is a 15-year millage history of Wilson School District. As you can see highlighted in yellow is the proposed final budget millage rate of 28.82 mils, which is a 4.2% increase, which is the adjusted Act 1 index, or an increase of 1.16 mils. You can see if you look at the 5 years, they're going back, that average increase averages 2.7%. This is the impact to a taxpayer and their tax bill based on the assessed values shown there as examples. The median homestead in our district is $121,700. A 4.2% increase would mean $141 increase in your bill. That would be gross before the increase in the gaming relief, or a monthly increase of about $12. This is the current listing as we sit right now of how Wilson's millage rate compares to the rest of the county. We're 15 out of 18 when it comes to the millage rate. We do not have published rates for 2022-23 as school districts just like us are first approving the proposed final budgets, and when those become public, we will update this slide. From what we're hearing, Wilson will have the highest percentage increase. However, I believe that we will still be in the bottom third and maybe slip to number 14 instead of number 15. And just to comment briefly on those school districts that have a millage rate lower than ours, when we looked at their assessment growth at the Finance Committee meetings, those districts have extremely increased commercial growth in the warehousing industry and have enjoyed those assessment increases in double digits that unfortunately Wilson has not. This slide shows our federal COVID-related funding that the district has received or is allocated to receive. Basically $9.8 million that we're showing there, and the actual spending of those funds in the prior years and the projected spend in the future. As you can see, this coming year will be $2.1 million and then completely phased out in 23-24. Our fund balances are projected to land around $28 million for the general fund at the end of this June. With this budget of a $4 million deficit, that will take us to a $24 million general fund overall fund balance. So just to wrap it up, what's next is we still have 30 days to look at this budget, continue to analyze it before our final budget adoption. Things can be changed both on the revenue and expenditure side. Hopefully the state will pass a budget as well. We will have a finance committee on June 6th and the board adoption of the final budget on June 20th. Looking past this particular budget year and beyond, we obviously have a lot of work to do. We have to look at the enrollment trends that we're speaking of and that we've looked at over the past year or so. We have to look at staffing needs to meet those trends and look at what the student population needs post-COVID and address those needs. We have to look at the staffing needs that relate to that. And obviously, we also have to look at our facilities improvement projects, as we have been working very hard on that, and we need to revisit those priorities. So that concludes my presentation, President Cocker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Schlossman. I will open it up for board members who have questions, but I think comments we should probably save until the actual voting item at 2.2. So questions. Mr. Martin.
Yeah, there's several slides in there, I think are misleading, especially when it shows the notes compared to the period back in the 10.
Mr. Martin, if you want to get closer to the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, I'll turn it on, first of all. That probably would be a lot better.
Is this the slide you were
So maybe you don't want to hear
referring
this,
to?
so maybe it's better if it was off and just nod and say, okay, let's move on.
Is this the slide you were referring to?
Yeah, I think that's somewhat misleading, because during that, under the orange section, there was a lot going on other than just building. We had a very high increase in payroll due to a very large increase. So there's a lot of things in there, so I don't think that's a very good comparison to use. I've done statistical analysis for years. You can change a bad number into a good number, whatever you want to present, you can present it. The thing is, this is just the beginning. The 4.2 increase, which I still told somebody today it was 4.3, but that's just the beginning. That's the tip of the iceberg. That's going to continue for years, and it's due in fact, and I won't get into that, but I just feel uncomfortable. I feel that. And I may have missed this in the presentation because I was still annoyed from our pre-board meeting and I got sidetracked, but I missed the slide on special education. Could you go back to that for a second?
The costs?
Right. I mean, this is really part, I think, people forget about. This is, I mean, we talk, we pound on charter schools, which that needs to be fixed. But special education is out of control. We spend 5 times per student for special education than we spend on an average student. That distracts from a lot of learning opportunities. And we get funding to parties. I don't care if we do that, as long as we get the funding for it. But the funding is falling back on to taxpayers, not only in our school district, but other school districts. So, I'm not saying that it's not needed, but I'm saying it can't keep falling back onto the taxpayers. It's a very difficult thing for us to get our hands around. We can't do anything, and obviously, but if you want to try to do something, contact your folks for that. That's a big bite. I'll save the rest for later. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions from Mrs. Schlossman? Okay,
Thank you very
Mrs.
much.
Schlossman. Thank you. I would just like to comment on the amount of work that went into this, not only this presentation, which was, I think, really helpful to see all the charts and everything explained in the way that Mrs. Schlossman presented it, but also the work that actually went into the physical budget for both our finance committee, but also Mrs. Schlossman, the administrative team. I appreciate all of the hard work and time that everyone puts into yearly presenting this and giving our district the things that we need to be successful. So thank you for all of your hard work that went into that. Mr. Maravich, we have some public participation on agenda items.
Rules of public participation pursuant to the Sunshine Law, Robert's Rules, and Board Policy. The following are the rules of public participation. Individuals attending the meeting are expected to conduct themselves in a responsible and respectful manner that does not disrupt the meeting. Public comment is not question and answer, but is instead an opportunity to offer comment on matters that are or may come before the board. In particular, personnel matters and student matters may not be commented on, even if the employee, parent, or student is speaking because of confidentiality laws. As it relates to questions, superintendent or acting superintendent may assign an administrator or may speak directly to the speaker after the meeting to attempt to answer those questions. All comments must be directed to the board as a body and not to any individual. Clapping, calling out, and cheering is not permitted, nor is conversations in the audience. Individuals may not approach the board tables. Individuals shall make their comments from the speaker's lectern. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. I'll provide a signal at 1 minute and ask you to wrap up when we're getting down to the deadline. Any person making any threats of violence will be removed from the meeting and may be cited by local police. All of these expectations are outlined in Board Policy 903, which is on board docs embedded on the website.
Thank you, Mr. Maravich. First, we have Tony DiGirolamo, budget.
I just have a few things to say about the budget. That when we looked at those charts, they showed a comparison to the previous year's budget, but when you look at this year's actual compared to next year's budget, you're looking at a roughly $8.4 million increase in expenditures between the years, which is 7%. Your taxes are going up 2%. So you're going from a situation where you're generating a roughly $1 million to $2 million surplus this year to one where you're generating a $5 million deficit in 1 year. And then what's happening is that just continues out. Every year we've got a 4% tax increase on average. Every year we got a $4 million deficit, and just keeps draining the coffers of the school district over that time just to hold to the Act 1 cap that you have on there. So it's really like something's happened this year, like a COVID or whatever happened, and now it just continues for eternity, and we never get done having tax increases and running deficits until then you have to go over them. So it really calls for some discipline in the way you look at things this year, and I think one of the areas you got to be really careful of is when you get $10 million in COVID grants, you got to be using them for the COVID-related stuff, which is one-time stuff. And when that's ended, the grants are over, the income's over, you really got to stop the spending that went with it. If you added teachers, personnel, temporary assignments, those kind of things have to find their way out. I think Christine even mentioned that they would, or at least that'd be looked at next year when that happens. So that's a big thing. And also looking at those staffing additions, that make sure that that what you're doing is when you look at them, you're looking at those ratios, like classroom size. What am I doing to classroom size? Am I really lowering it in a time when we've got extreme inflation? Maybe I should be holding that classroom size the same. Or my ratio of spending or teachers per student, some of those kind of metrics, I think you really got to take into consideration to do it.
1 minute.
Because otherwise, it looks pretty hopeless for the taxpayer out there to have continued inflation like that in our taxes, and while you're draining the resources of the cash in order to keep the taxes as low as they are. So that's all I had.
Thank you for your comments. Brian Shavinsky, Budget.
Good evening, everyone. Public education does not just benefit a student, their parent, or a guardian. It exists for the benefit of the social order. We've discovered as a species that it's useful to have an educated population. You don't need a student to have you don't need to have a student or a child that's a student to benefit from public education. Every second of every day of your life, you benefit from public education. I thank the school board for doing their best and helping ensure we all have a well-educated community. Because a well-educated community that has traits such as critical thinking skills, empathy for others, and understands the value of our democracy. That's why I think you guys are on the right path for doing and investing in our budget. I know every dollar counts, but every dollar that we invest pays back manyfold over in our community for everyone. I also hope we can find a way to invest in the arts. We saw earlier today that the arts are very impactful to many, if not all. And I hope we can invest in one way is renovating or finding a way to renovate the auditorium to support the theater and live arts. It's also a primary tomorrow, so please, those who are able to vote in a primary in Pennsylvania, they're closed, please do so and keep our community and our democracy strong. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Val Delp, Millage Increase.
Good evening. If you're planning to vote in favor of the millage increase tonight, I just want to leave you with a few things that I hope you've considered. 4.2% might not sound like a lot. I know Christine gave the example of $114 a year. Doesn't seem like a whole lot, but many families right now are in the process of cutting wherever they can to be able to keep up with their bills and to keep food on the table. Add on top of that the fear that new parents are experiencing not being able to get baby formula, everyone's investments currently declining, and prices continuing to climb. Are you willing to be responsible for adding to their financial distress? I know no one wants to cut any programs, and I don't wish that for you guys to have to face that decision. But as families are cutting their discretionary expenses right now to be able to pay for what is most important, school districts should be doing the same. You are partially responsible for the financial health of this community. Sometimes hard decisions have to be made for the overall good. Finally, those in the retired community that are barely surviving on Social Security alone may have no means to afford a tax increase. And while it is true that you are not responsible for their lifetime of financial decisions that have gotten them into that position, you will be responsible for putting an extra burden on them now. Are you prepared to justify a tax increase to your elderly neighbors, parents, or grandparents in your communities? I know I personally would not want to have to face that criticism at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Jeff Janagavo, Millage Increase.
So I'm dismayed at how this budget is presented and its subsequent tax increase are being presented. You know, we had a bunch of robust debate and discussion when it came to the potential $52 million renovation project that didn't add a single classroom to our schools. And yet tonight, we're discussing a tax increase, and it was snuck in quietly on a sole agenda posting with 24 hours notice to the community. I'm equally insulted, as should the community, and those who've spoken here previously regarding the spending of this board and the idea that taxes would increase, because we were told not to. We were told that wouldn't happen. We've been told by this board repeatedly those taxes would not be going up, specifically by our board president Cocker. And now tonight, there's a vote to increase the millage rate and subsequently property taxes. So the lack of transparency is bothersome. You could have chosen to alert the community of this vote by at least saying publicly, prior to tonight, there is an increase in the millage rate vote. Frankly, I'd have preferred to have seen the same appetite for discussion there as there has been for other projects and other policies. After all, this vote impacts every single taxpayer in the district, so why so little appetite for previous discussion? Instead, it's chosen to list it, quoting, request approval of the proposed final budget for 22-23 in the amount of $125,900,000 at the rate of 28.82 mils, as per the resolution of permanent minutes. Sounds like pretty much parliamentary procedure to me. What would have been more fair to our community would have been to, at minimum, have the spine to list the vote on the agenda as an increase in the millage rate and not tucked in behind another statement, as though it were just simply some procedural vote. Instead, it feels like pure obfuscation, because the reality of the situation is, in order, we have a teacher's contract coming up, which will raise our budget. We have an elementary school that must be built, or elementary school is expanded. You will decide. We have Southern and Cornwall Terrace remodeling planned. Okay? And then likely, we will, at some point, maybe concurrent or later, come back to the renovation project. 4 major spending increases. And just learning tonight that 13% of our budget actually goes to students, the rest of it to teachers. Now, that's not a statement against teachers, it's just a statement of fact. So I find that all very troublesome, and that's what I have to say on it.
Just to clarify, since my name was mentioned, I at no point said that our taxes would not increase this year. I stated that our taxes would not increase as a direct result of the renovation project, which was put out to bid, which we rejected. And the reason that that project would not directly impact our taxes is because we went out to bond, which we then extend over years, which would not increase our debt service more than the 10.9, which it currently is and is expected to be for the near future. Chastity Santiago, tax increase.
All right. Short person, sorry. George Bernal Shaw once said, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. Meeting after meeting, the members of our community have approached this podium to express their thoughts in the hope that this board would listen to understand and not simply listen to reply. I do applaud those members of this board who took the time to articulate a response to the community and providing insight on their views. While we may not all share your views, I can respect your position. It's unfortunate that a number of your fellow board members only have the capacity to disagree and respond versus your ability to listen and understand. So enough with the feelings, let's talk numbers. 6, the number of board members that are here tonight that have been with this board 4 years or less. Let's talk about 79.25%, the ranking of our school since those members have joined. The 3 members that have been here longer than them had a concurrent ranking of 91.5% for our district. I don't know, maybe a trend, maybe not. Our spending and our revenue. Revenue is up 19% since 2016 per student. However, our spending is only up by 11%, and over the past year, it went up 8%, but yet our spending per pupil, 3%. Math, I don't know, doesn't work for me. We have a 17% drop in proficiency with science from 4th to 8th grade. We have a 10% drop in proficiency in English language arts from 3rd to 8th grade. 29% proficiency drop in math from 3rd to 8th grade. Where is this money going? What is it benefiting our children? What are you doing with it? makes me question policies 601 and 602. Some updates that were made about 2 weeks ago, where the board now reads and recognizes its responsibility to district taxpayers to ensure that public monies expended by the school district are utilized for delivery of educational program in a manner that mandates full value to the taxpayers. I don't know about you guys, but those drop in proficiency numbers and the lack of spending does not show me you're holding true to that piece. So you might as well just redline all of that. We're also some details on policy 602. The financial requirements of district programs shall be reviewed on a continual basis. Specifically, who is the designee? Because you've changed that. It used to say someone else. Now it says a designee. And why do they have to read it periodically? Why can't they, now it says best efforts? What does that mean? I'm sick of this vague language when it comes to our students and our community, that you have no transparency with us, and we are fed up with it. So I just want to ensure that maybe you could go back and give us a little bit more clarification on what best efforts would be, because I sure hope it's better than the 6 board members that have 4 years tenure here tonight.
Okay, thank you for all of the comments. That precludes the public participation on agenda items. The board met in executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss personnel issues. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the school board meeting held on May 2nd, 2022 as attached. I'm going to split 2.1 and 2.2. So just on 2.1, looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the school board meeting held on May 2nd, 2022.
Schneider, so moved.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Do we have a second?
Casper.
Mrs. Casper, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. 2.2, request approval of the proposed final budget for 2022-23 in the amount of $125,900,000 at the rate of 28.82 mils as per the resolution to the permanent minutes. Looking for a motion for 2.2.
Negrini, so moved.
Mr. Negrini, thank you. Do we have a second?
McCray.
Mr. McCray, thank you. Any comments? Mr. Negrini?
Mrs. Cocker, thank you. First, I just want to respond to the communication brought forth about transparency at our last board meeting. As reporting out of the Finance Committee, it was reported by myself here for the public consumption and for everyone else watching that the proposed final budget would include a 4.2% increase. So this was not something that anyone was looking to sneak in for anyone's benefit or detriment. So I do have to push back on that particular comment. Regarding the proposed final budget, obviously there's a lot that can change between now and our second meeting in June. With the passing of the final budget, there is certainly always great debate and discussion about personnel and whether or not additions of personnel is warranted. There's certainly going to be continued discussion moving forward about the personnel additional requests for the 22-23 budget, which all in for what we saw tonight would be 0.27 mils added to the budget of a recommended 1.16 mil increase. And I would just point out also, I had suggested previously in terms of ways that perhaps we can cut costs and what those costs would look like and what programmatic costs might look like if, as suggested previously, what a 0% tax increase would look like. So, for example, our costs for sending students to the BCTC amounts to 0.46 mils for the 22-23 budget. All in for arts here at the district, 0.49 mils. All in for music, 0.86 mils. All in for every extracurricular activity, 1.14 mils. the all-in for non-special education paraprofessionals, these aides that provide assistance within the classroom setting, 0.39 mils. Obviously, salaries and benefits encompass most of our budget, but that's where the realistic, difficult decisions are made as far as what should be cut or reallocation of funds. So we will continue to have those discussions and work towards doing what is best for our community, for our students, and for our taxpayers. And there's no one simple answer to all of those complex decisions, but I did find it helpful to outline what Christine in administration, and then further on what this board goes through with a budget process, and what those actual dollar figures look like, what the millage equivalent looks like as we make this decision year in and year out. So I just wanted to share those thoughts and data moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Negrini. Any other comments? Mr. Martin?
Yeah. Okay, I got my mic on this time. I wrote this epistle here, and I am going to read it. I bounced it off my neighbor, and he said, well, it's pretty heavy stuff. But I feel that, folks that listen, if you listen to it, and maybe listen to it again, you'll try to get what I'm trying to convey here. But I'm going to start off with, the budget is extremely conservative. There's a minimum of $3 million that could be adjusted in this budget. But my greater concern is that education continues to move away from fact-based education to a philosophical approach, which is inherent in all government agencies, which we are. An example, I can give you an example. I worked for 22 years in the government environment for funding special programs, and most of you people probably don't remember this, but in the 70s, late 60s and 70s, the government had a great idea that we're going to get into the affordable housing program. We're going to take care of all the needy people in the cities, and everybody's going to be happy. Well, they had people with PhDs and lots of letters behind them, stamp approval. Oh, this is the best thing that we could do. It was a total failure. So what they did then, we tore those multi-concrete prisons down, which they were just 20, 30 floors of high-rise buildings, put in hundreds of families. Crime was high, drug use was abundant, and it was just miserable life for these people. But, the government said, this is going to work. Well, they gave that up. They put it back into private business hands through what they call the New Market Tax Credit, Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Project, where the federal government now says, states, here's money, give it to private developers, build affordable housing. It's been a great success. The communities are nice. This is just one area where when we start thinking for people outside of our expertise, we tend to forget that the government can't think for people. They try to, but it's not a good mix when you have government thinking, especially, like I said, all sorts of people from all sorts of levels of education and poverty areas said this is the greatest thing. So I just want to, and that bothers me because we sometimes think that we can do more when we should actually be doing less. Excuse me. And you're probably thinking, what does that have to do with the budget? Well, it's based on the fact that education has gotten so far away from the educational process of fact-finding facts. Let's look at where we're at. Let's dwell into situations. And it's unfortunate, most times in education, this has been proven through various when I say high education levels, but some of the best schools have come up with, education and people in education want to fix stuff without knowing what they're fixing. They have a tendency to gravitate, so here's the problem, let's fix it. They don't dwell into it, they don't understand it, they never find the root cause of the problem, but we're going to fix it. Well, that may be good, that may be bad. Unfortunately, oftentimes it fails. It's common for government to fail, and just like many times when you see things in the paper about these programs, that programs, they emerge, they evolve, And it seems like in education, we just add, we never subtract from anything. Our budgets get bigger, we have the same old programs, we just keep adding layers, and that's kind of what we've been doing over the last several years. And I talked about about this, before. But in today's society, there's so much social platforms and so much media, we often lose sight of the facts and become sidetracked with opinions that, detour us away from the real problems. And I'm going to use this example. It may not be a good example. The person said don't do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to talk about the Ukraine, okay? The fact is, thousands of people are dying on both sides. I don't like that. Nobody should be dying, but they are. But the media, social platforms, do you think they care about that? No. They care about Putin has cancer. They care about generals talking about why things are failing. They talk about if I was in general, I'd be doing this. All these stories that they're talking about that have no bearing on the fact of what's happening today. But we have it makes for good reading and good social comments, but it's not fact-based. And we have so far strayed away from fact-based education that it now costs us millions of dollars for social programs. And I get it. We talked about this in the pre-board. We got to fix the kids. And I'm tired of hearing about, and I got to make sure I'm going to read this correctly. Hold on here. Just bear with me. I lost my place. Well, since I can't find my place, I'm just going to add a little bit. I'm tired of hearing about how our population is changing, demographics are changing. That's a good thing. That shows that we're evolving, and that's a great thing. But when I hear about the kids are bringing excess baggage, parents don't care, there's fractured families, there's more divorces, you're making excuses. We just keep making excuses for the children. We got to end that. Divorces are at an all-time low. There's a lot of things that are happening. We got to find the root cause, not try to hire more people to fix it, fix the cause. And that's what I'm trying to get at. We need to address the issues, the root cause, not trying to react to a situation. We got to start acting to situations. Maybe it's more discipline. Maybe some kids get expelled more. I don't know. But we got to stop putting the burden on taxpayers for social programs. And we talked about family units. Family units are fractured. They always have been fractured. And that's something new. And I understand it. We have all these, we create, through social media, we create issues that may or may not really be a situation. Just like we created, we talk about overcrowding of schools. We created that situation. And this budget, does not accomplish what we really need to get back to. I think somebody mentioned in the public comment section that a lot of this is, not going to education. Well, they'll say, the counterpoint is, we're fixing those kids. Well, I'm not sure we're doing that either. I'm not sure we're doing them justice. And, it's like my neighbor said after all said and done with this, he said, I understand what you're saying, but you got to understand the perception of boards. It's like weathermen. Weathermen can be 50% wrong, and that's a good thing. Seems like we do the same thing. Well, that's not good enough for me. I'm really now going to start trying to be a little more aggressive in what we do and look at everything. We have programs we can look at. I know we talked about there's in that budget there's 1.5 million we get away with a minute without impacting education, and even though, as I think, if I recall, Christine said our growth rate was 6% over the last 5 years, well, our expenses have gone up over 15%. So there's a discorrelation there. And the quality of education isn't there also. So I'm going to leave you with this fact, and this is a fact. The average taxpayer in in Wilson School District pays more in school taxes and education taxes than they do in federal taxes. That shows me there's something wrong. Something's out of whack. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Hart?
First of all, I just want to say to Mr. Martin, can you hear me? Doesn't sound like he's coming through.
Let's bring it a little closer.
I just want to start by saying, Mr. Martin, I do respect what you have to say. I'm not trying to dispute anything with you, but we're not throwing money at bad problems. We're throwing money to good things. We're putting funding into our teachers, our support staff, our administration, and believing in what we can do as a team to benefit the students and the community. You made the comment, and I'm not going to debate it, but you said there are people who don't have education experience making decisions for people for education, and they don't know what they're talking about. I respect what you do, but sometimes you don't seem to respect what some educators bring to the table, whether the board members, administration, or whatever. You're not an educator, but you're great with money, and I respect everything you have to say with that, but I would like to challenge you and any other board member to step a day into the classroom, the life of the building of an elementary school, middle school, or high school. And then once you see that, you're not going to be an expert on it. I'm not an expert on it, because things are always changing. But before you can say that we're not doing a good job and just keep throwing money after money at bad problems, I challenge you to be in a classroom, be in a building for a day at least, and any other board member that would like to consider that. I will be voting no for the budget. I do respect Christine, the administrators, and the finance committee, and everyone that put a hard effort into this budget. I appreciate that. I respect it. I'm not doing it because I don't believe in what numbers you're presenting. I believe we need to look deeper into the largest part of our budget, and that's personnel. $96 million on personnel. What can we do differently? Whether we're adding, subtracting, trying to find a way to do it better, I just think we need to do that. I'm not doing it out of disrespect for anyone that put anything into this budget. I truly do respect you and all of your hard work, but I think we need, and I'm on the HR committee, I think we need to look deeper into what we're doing with our personnel dollars before we pass the final budget on June 20th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Martin?
I just want to say, I understand what Brad's saying, and I will take his offer up, not his offer, but I will, if the superintendent wishes to do so, I will take that offer up and spend a day or 2 days. My days are flexible, so that's an offer outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, Mr. Schneider?
Yeah, excuse me. I'd like to speak to what Mr. Martin was saying about getting to the cause of things, and I think it's one of the big ones was something he pointed out earlier in that slide presentation about the costs of special ed funding. That has fallen greater and greater on the local taxpayer, but it's mandated. It's required by law. We have to provide those services. And that money, perhaps some of us are at the wrong meetings directing our anger in the wrong direction. We're forced to deal with the ramifications of that. We're forced to deal with the ramification of communities giving developers more and more lots to build houses on that don't bring in the revenue that it costs to educate the kids who live in those. Those are costs that are being dumped upon the district that we can't control. So perhaps we want to look at the appropriate places to direct our anger and look for what is the cause of some of this cost.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Any other comments? Dr. Kennedy?
As part of my job, I get to go visit all kinds of classrooms in many different districts, and I've been doing the professor thing for 11 years, and this year has been a year like no other. I'll describe a classroom I went to go see, not in this district, but in another district. There were 25 kindergartners. One little guy was crawling, when I walked in on the classroom, one little guy was crawling on a bookshelf, another little guy was in the corner playing with cars, another little teeny tiny guy was hanging on the teacher's leg, and it was pretty much chaos when I walked in there. And then a little friend started throwing up in the middle of the room in a bucket, and I was just, oh, that's pretty good for a kindergarten class, getting it into the bucket. And then all of his other little friends start to go over to him and pet him. It's okay. And then you have to say, no, friends, like, you can't come close to that. Let's sit down. So I'm like herding cats. My student, God bless her, is trying to get the two little guys that are, and the teacher's trying to detach the other child from the bookshelf. So then I just started to teach while they were while they were doing their thing, and they're trying to get the other little guy to the nurse, and I felt bad leaving, and I had to teach that afternoon, and I didn't feel safe, like it wasn't a safe environment. And while that is an extreme, I've never seen that before, it is an extreme example, unfortunately, it's a microcosm of what's going on in education today. Too many kids, too many different needs, not enough resources. And we're lucky in a district that we do have more resources than other districts, but I caution that the money that we put into these students, and if we do things right from the beginning, is less money that we'll need to spend later on. I left that classroom thinking, and it was the week before PSSAs, and I thought, these kindergartners are going to have to take their PSSAs in 3 years. I went back to that classroom a couple weeks later to observe a lesson, and 22 out of those 25 kids hung on every single one of my students' words. And I don't know how they did that, because there were still friends climbing in the back of the classroom. There were still friends that were hanging on the other teacher's legs and playing with cars and shouting out. And just, if you've ever been in a kindergarten class, it's like teaching on an ocean on a good day. I mean, they're constantly moving. It's, but I kept thinking, like, these kids are going to take the PSSAs in 3 years. And it's no reflection on what that classroom teacher is doing. She did not raise her voice. Not one time in all the visits I've ever been there. I was in awe of her and the wonderful things she was doing. But we can't pretend that these are the same, that is the same kind of kindergarten we would have had when I started teaching 25 years ago. When I started teaching, we had 29 in a 6th grade class. It was not the same kind of 29 we would have in a 6th grade class at this time. They have more needs, and we need to staff our school, and we need to have the resources available to meet those students' needs, because if we don't do it in the beginning, it's going to cost us more in the long run. It's going to cost us more in prison time. It's going to cost us more in having low-income families. It's going to cost us more and more and more and more beyond the school years if we don't get the education right from the beginning.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. I would like to comment on kind of something related to what Mr. Schneider said, in the idea that when families are moving into Wilson, which we see a ton of developments coming in, and we know property has been sold and is going to be developed, because Wilson is number 2 in the county. We are a good school district. Our teacher pay is kind of in the middle. Our taxes are always towards the bottom, maybe 4th from the bottom next year, but still towards the bottom. And yet we are ranked consistently either 1st or 2nd in the county, behind YMSA, and kind of have like a, back and forth, but 2nd in the county. We are ranked consistently high in the state. We're number 60 for our high school, number 60 in Pennsylvania. This isn't just some trick. Like, we have great educators, and we have a great system and community here, and we do a lot with the resources that we have. If you look at the taxes and the money that we ask of our community. So rather than, and I understand, because I have this conversation with my father every single year when it comes to the school taxes increasing. I get it. And my parents are both retired, my father-in-law is retired. I understand that the real life implications of increasing taxes. Everyone at this table, except for Mr. Maravich, is going to be financially affected by an increase in taxes. We all live here. We are just regular people that decided to help out our school district by being on the school board. But we have homes in the community, and we are going to have to increase our payment to the school as well. So I just want to give a personal thank you to our Wilson community for being willing to support this school system. I'm the oldest of 5 children. All 5 of us went through the Wilson School District. Many of us, well, I'll say all of us, are contributing back to this community in positive ways because we had an excellent education at Wilson. Would my parents be able to afford to pay for 5 children to go to private school if we didn't have a public school option? Absolutely not. I calculated this. This was my one solid argument that my father didn't have a response back to one time. I calculated for five kids, 10, I'm going to say this was like 20 years ago, so let's say $10,000 per student, as opposed to like the $16,000 that we pay per student now. $10,000 per student for 13 years of school, $650,000 is what they received in education for the five of us. Let's say their taxes are around $5,000. We didn't have like a mansion or anything, like I looked up their address, it's around $5,000. It would take them 130 years to pay off the money that was put into our education. And the reason that we were able to do is because we have a strong community. We have people who no longer have kids in school that contribute back to our school district. We have people that never will have children, and they still contribute back to our school district. Because every student that moves into those new developments, unless their parents are paying $16,000 a year in property taxes, which I'm sure that exists, and good for them for buying a house that requires $16,000 in property taxes, but we're all helping out to pay for that child. So unless we have all the developments in our area that are coming in and that people are moving in and don't ever plan on having children, and they're just going to support the school system, thank you, that's great. But that's probably not happening. Our projected enrollments are going to increase. So guess what? Our taxes are going to increase. The money that we need to educate those students is going to increase. And as we saw, most of it is staffing. And so the idea that putting money into staffing is not putting money into children is also a really strange concept to me. So we put, I don't remember what the percentage that Mr. Martin said was that goes to children, not including the 74% of the budget for staffing, in that it goes to children, it baffles me. We can't have a school if we don't have teachers. That's our number one resource, is our people, and it's our most expensive resource. So we're going to need more people to teach the more children that are moving in. So I just want to thank our community for contributing to this amazing school program and school system that we have that has been built over the last 24 years of different people being on this board. And I would like to thank everyone that was involved in the budget in doing the most that they can to make it as minimal as possible while still meeting all of the very real needs that our students in this community have. Are there any other comments? Mr. Case.
Thank you. I just want to reflect upon Mr. Hart's comments, and I agree with you. We were $5 million over budget last year. We did a scoop, still didn't help. We're $5 million over this year. We had a whole bunch of ESSERS funds, and we're still over. I'm okay with keeping up with inflation and having a millage increase, but to have that, the ESSERS funds, the scoop last year, and we're still over, something is broken, and this is unsustainable. We do have to dig deeper. We have too many IEPs out there. We are turning into an a la carte education for everyone. It is expensive. It is draining. Life is hard. There needs to be some sort of sensibility and accountability to parents and kids at some point, instead of lowering the bar constantly and having all the paperwork and everything else that goes along with it. IEPs, many are justified. I would question some of the ones that I'm aware of, just in general, of neighbors and friends and people talking. This is an unsustainable system, but I would agree with Mr. Hart that we need to dig deeper and take a second look at staffing. We keep talking about attrition and the employees that are leaving the district that have higher salaries and replacing them with newer teachers that are at the early stages of the salary scale. And I'm not quite feeling that that's actually happened. It may be, but I think we should be seeing that in the budget a little bit more than we are. So I am going to vote no on this for those particular reasons. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Any other comments? Mrs. Casper?
I just wanted to comment on, I really appreciate Dr. Kennedy's more sort of micro perspective on the classroom. And Mr. Martin, I just wanted to comment on how you mentioned about that we're always trying to sort of tailor our education based on the changes in our demographic. And I think that's really important in education. So from a more macro perspective, I often see education as always being on this sort of cultural lag. It's always reacting to its population changes rather than really kind of being more proactive in terms of seeing these changes coming and making those systemic changes. So although I disagree with that we do need to make sure that we have the services and the resources available to our changing population, I also think that education as a system needs to be a lot more flexible and agile and be more reflective and representative of the populations that they serve. In my experience, I haven't really seen a lot of flexibility or changes in the populations of educators. We often get the same groups of students over and over again in our programs, and we put them into schools where they don't look like the students that they're serving. They don't come from the same neighborhoods as the students that they're serving. And we need to change that in education. We need to look to different ways of recruiting and inspiring people and young people to become educators. We need to, and right now it's a really crazy time because our educators are exhausted. And I don't know what kind of role models they'll be for a lot of our young people. So I think it's important that we look also to the system of education in terms of how it's going to sort of be flexible and cater to these major changes that we're seeing in our populations. So that was just my point with that. So I appreciate everybody's comment, though, and I appreciate the work that's been done. And I do think that our school district, that Wilson, is really thinking outside the box and making some major changes and really looking and reviewing the kinds of things that we already are doing and listening to our students and our teachers. I think that's really important. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Casper. Mr. McCray?
Thank you very much. Ms. Schlosser, I know this wasn't in tonight's presentation, and I apologize, I don't have the number with me at the moment, but what was the projected balance of this year's school budget in terms of our
You mean the projected
deficit
actual
versus surplus? Yeah.
Surplus,
Mhm.
okay. So the surplus, as projected based on our March close, when we talked about it at the Finance Committee meeting in May, was $800,000 would be a surplus
And it was budgeted originally at
at $4 million loss.
$4 million loss, and we're coming out $800,000 ahead. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Mr. Martin?
Yes, I just want to correct something. If I said 74% of our budget was for salaries, it's 80%. So I think you said I said 74, and if I said that, it's 80%.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
No.
Mr. Hart?
Respectfully, no.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
No. No.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
That is 6 yes, 3 no.
Treasurer's report, Mr. Martin.
Mr. President, I submit for approval tonight the Treasurer's report, the investment reports, and the financial reports as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Negrini, second.
Roll call, please. Oh, I'm sorry, any comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Payment of bills, Mr. Negrini.
Thank you. Make a motion to approve the payment of bills from the following: from the general fund, $5,318,583.73. From capital reserve, $795. From the 2019A construction fund, $3,572,068. And from the 2021C construction fund, $52,494.40.
Thank you, Mr. Negrini. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Hart, thank you. Any comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Financial reports, Mr. Negrini.
Motion to approve the following April 2022 financial reports: the cafeteria and childcare and the activity accounts from Southern Middle School, Wilson West, and Senior High as attached.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Martin, thank you. Any comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Superintendent's report. Dr. Trickett.
Thank you, President Cocker. Before I get into my recommendations within my report, I just wanted to make a comment. There were a few folks who spoke earlier during Section 1 who spoke specifically to some of the facilities projects that were part of the May 6th board conversation, specifically as they related to the arts. And obviously, having Joe here today in the presentation triggered some more thoughts. So we just wanted to kind of take everyone from that point on May 6th to where we are today and remind everyone that the board did authorize the rejection of those bids at that time, in large part due to the substantial cost that came in significantly over the estimated budgets. That doesn't mean that our work on these topics, the work on our scope and the work on our priorities is done. It just means that we had to pause and kind of regroup and relook at how we're going to move and recommend moving forward in the future. And while we are disappointed that we did have to reject those bids as a collective team on that day, we are and we continue to be committed to putting forth a plan and a timeline in the near future that will come back to this board for consideration. We're hopeful that we'll continue conversation throughout the summer months, working through our committee structures that we have in place. So tonight I present the superintendent's report, inclusive of the personnel and program recommendations. Specifically, I'd like to highlight just a few individuals, as I've tried to do over the last few meetings. We talked a lot about personnel, and a lot of those personnel conversations reside within this report, specifically highlighting the 34 years of retirees, 34 collective years of experience for our support staff, crossing guards, substitute monitorial aides, and school bus aides. These folks are part of that system that make this school community special, welcoming, and inclusive for our kids. The new hires that we have on the professional staff side, we have John Johnston and Susan Tomshow. They'll be joining our team next year. Just really excited. Anytime we can bring someone in to be a bulldog, typically when we get someone on our staff, we're able to keep them for a large part of their career. And again, these two professionals will impact the lives of a lot of children. And then lastly, under 6.7 in extracurricular, obviously Matt and Jacob are both listening and participating in this meeting. Thank them for all they do for kids. But specific focus here on our volunteers. Our district is made up of a lot of employees, as Ms. Schlossman eloquently spoke about, but it's also made up of a lot of volunteers that contribute time and energy into supporting the needs of our kids. So I present items 6.1 and 6.7.
Thank you, Dr. Trickett. Looking for a motion to approve superintendent's report. 6.1 to 6.7 is presented.
Schneider, so moved.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Do we have a second?
McCray?
Mr. McCray, thank you. Any comments?
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
I just want to congratulate all of the retirements that are listed tonight, but I want to jump back to a meeting ago when Mrs. Carroll's retirement was listed. She was not here. I just want to say I had the privilege of working
That was
with-
on purpose?
We thought so. So that's why I waited. I'll keep it short. I worked with Mrs. Carroll 6 years at Woodfield, and we worked together to do what we needed to support the staff, the students, the community, the parents. On the board, the past several years, Mrs. Carroll's been on the board as secretary. I couldn't have done what I did without Mrs. Carroll. She is one of the most professional, loving, caring, kind person that will put herself out there to support anyone and help anyone, because that's the kind of person she is. We'll be able to fill your position, but we'll never be able to replace you. So, happy retirement.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Abstain.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
That's 8 yes, 0 no, 1 abstain.
Under consent item 7.1, accept with gratitude a donation from statewide tax recovery, a check for $200 to be used for a scholarship for a financially warranted student who is furthering his or her education. B, in memory of Jennifer Sarnes from Susan L. Heisey, a check in the amount of $50 to be used to purchase 2 books for the Southern Middle School Library. From an anonymous donor, 5 copies of the book Stamped for Kids to be distributed to elementary school libraries. From Joseph Palumbo, Director of the Grandview Gallery, time, talent, and materials for the Super Nikki mural to be displayed at Shiloh Hills Elementary School. Do we have a motion for 7.1? Dr. Kennedy, thank you. Do we have a second?
Schneider.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Any comments? Mr. Negrini?
Despite the fact that there have been a number of disagreements, I think, amongst some of the works of Ibram Kendi, I do believe that the idea of not allowing discussions to take place in an educational setting would be a disservice to our children. I believe that there can be some that would take this particular donation of this particular book to signal certain things within our district. Again, I personally disagree with some of the teachings or findings of Dr. Kendi. However, this is a book that is deemed age appropriate for children in elementary school, and I think ultimately, should conversations surround any reading that takes place within our district, so long as it's age appropriate, can be healthy as opposed to unhealthy. So I do think that this will probably warrant some further discussions or accusations moving forward, but nonetheless, certainly, as I said, further conversations about controversial topics is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a healthy thing. And I think that was why there were some clarifications on the particular title of this book and whether or not it was for those 12 and up or younger. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Negrini. Any other comments? Mr. Martin?
Yes, I had a similar concern with the book. I don't have an issue as long as it's age appropriate. But my question is, if a book is age appropriate, regardless of what it's saying, would we accept it? For instance, I'm going to make something up here. Just give me a second. how about, I can't think of anything, but say there was an extreme right-wing view, a book, and teaching kids about, the best way to survive or prepare for a catastrophe or something that's really, not in their best interest, but it's age appropriate. Would we allow that? I mean, is this going to be an open door policy where anything that's age appropriate can come into the school? Because if that's not the case, then I can't vote for this. So I need some assurance that any book that's age appropriate will be allowed and we don't pick and choose. That's it.
I can confirm that, yes, anything that is age appropriate will be accepted for donation.
Okay.
Our librarians, it's their job to review books and review the content of the books and to find where they are best fit among our school libraries.
I'm sorry, that's, as long as I know that any book that's age, I mean, like I said, we don't pick and choose, so, like I said, I'm not taking sides on this at all. I just, as long as it's age appropriate and we don't discriminate, good or bad, I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I would like to just refocus back on the piece of art that we are accepting tonight. It occurred to me that although I know the background of the story, everybody may not have, read the front cover of the Reading Eagle or watched the video that accompanies this project. So just a really quick piece of background. Mr. Palumbo was a Wilson senior at the time when Nikki's classmates presented this idea of doing something at the school for her memory. And Mr. Palumbo and his teacher, Mr. Chappell, who the gallery is dedicated to, along with other art students, came up with the design, working with her classmates and her friends, and then went to Lincoln Park and painted the design on the playground with the help of some of her friends. The video that accompanies it is heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time, and it interviews her former classmates that kind of initiated the project. And it's just, as well as Joe and Mr. Chappell. And I highly encourage everyone to watch the video. I believe Mrs. Troutman will be sharing that or has already shared it along with this project. It's just a really nice way for the community to come together and show her family that although it was in 2004, she hasn't been forgotten. And while, out on the concrete, the artwork can't stay forever. Joe's found a creative way to make it last in our school and for the family. So I just wanted to thank him for that.
I'd just like to add that I was a Lincoln Park community member. I lived in Lincoln Park when Nikki got sick. And although I didn't know her personally, I knew a lot of the kids on my street. I knew her little best friend. And it is and was such a close-knit community, and it really did rock this community. And I was there the day that they were painting, I only lived 2 houses down, I was there the day that they were painting the mural. And it was absolutely devastating to that community. And I feel like that's part of the reason why I'm always going to stick up for Lincoln Park. And I'm always going to be bitter about them closing that school, because it wasn't just a school that they closed, it was a whole community that they cut off. And while I'm happy that it's going to be at Shiloh Hills, that community really still deserves its own school. And I'd love to see that, and I'd love to see it return back where it belongs.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. Any other comments? Okay, this is a voice vote, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, all of the donations, thank you with gratitude. Under Human Resources, 8.1, request approval to set the ESY teacher rate at $50 per hour and the paraprofessional rate at $25 per hour for the 2022 session from June 26th through July 27th, 2022. This represents an increase in hourly rates of $15 per hour and $10 per hour respectively for these positions and will be covered by IDEA and ESSER funds. Looking for a motion for 8.1.
So moved.
Mr. Martin, thank you. Second?
Casper?
Mrs. Casper, thank you. Any comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Abstain.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker.
Yes.
That's 8 yes, 0 no, 1 abstain.
Under Student Services, 9.1, request permission to contract with Capstone Academy for one special education student for 2022-23 regular school year, services at a cost of $87,273.34 for the school year beginning 9/6/2022 and ending 6/15/2023. 9.2, request approval of the 21-22 RSY New Story contract for one special education student at a cost of $385 per day, beginning May 10th, 2022, and ending June 1st, 2022. 9.3, request approval of a contract with the Children's Home of Reading Day Academy for one special education student during the 21-22 school year for regular school year services as a result of disciplinary expulsion hearing at a cost of $216.32 per day, pending solicitor approval. 9.4, request approval of a tuition agreement with New Story for extended school year programming for 5 special education students at a cost of $385 per day per student for the 2022 ESY term from June 20th to July 28th, 2022. 9.5, request a contract with the Wyomissing School District for 2 special education students to attend Wilson School District ESY program at a total of $5,250, beginning June 27th, 2022, and ending July 28th, 2022. Looking for a motion to approve Student Services Agenda Items 9.1 through 9.5 as presented.
Casper?
Mrs. Casper, thank you. Mr. Hart, second. Any comments? Mr. Martin?
Yes, this is a good example under 9.4, what I was talking about, and I think what Robert alluded to. The cost for this particular student is going to be about in the $70,000 range, and it's going to be the burden of us and the taxpayers here to pay the freight. So once again, we have to do it. I mean, I can vote no as a protest vote. It's not going to do any good. But this is one of those things where people can make a difference if they contact the appropriate, legislator. So I just want to, this is just one that happens to be on tonight, and I just want to share that with you. Thank you.
Mr. Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, that's for summer school, extended school year, so it's a 5-week program, 4 days a week. So
I stand corrected.
I just wanted to make that
I
clear.
stand corrected.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
It's 9 yes, 0 no.
Under Operations, 10.1, request permission to purchase district custodial supplies through the BCIU bid for July 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2023 as attached. 10.2, request permission to purchase district art supplies through the BCIU bid from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. 10.3, request permission to purchase district classroom and office supplies through the BCIU bid from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. Looking for a motion to approve operation agenda items 10.1 to 10.3 as presented.
So moved. Case.
Mr. Case, thank you. Do we have a second?
Schneider.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Any comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Finance, 11.1, request approval to award the following bids: elementary and secondary art supplies, elementary and secondary music equipment and supplies, secondary technology supplies, and fall athletic supplies as presented. 11.2, request approval of the Berks County Intermediate Unit for 2022-23 tax bill services, including the printing of school real estate and per capita tax bills and payment tracking using e-tax software, per the attached new rate schedule. 11.3, request approval of a 3-year agreement with PepsiCo Beverages for district-wide beverage services as attached. 11.4, request approval of the budget transfers dated April 13th, 2022 through May 10th, 2022, sorry, there's too many twos. May 10th, 2022 is attached. Looking for motion to approve finance agenda items 11.1 through 11.4 as presented.
So moved, Negrini.
Mr. Negrini, thank you. Do we have a second? Mr. Hart, thank you. Any comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Transportation, request approval to award contracts for the purchase of fuel for the 2022-23 school year through the Berks County Joint Purchasing Board to Tally Petroleum Enterprises for 48,000 gallons for the first 3 months of the school year at a price of $2.93 for unleaded gas, and to Tally Petroleum Enterprise for 48,000 gallons for the first 3 months of the school year at a price of $3.30, hopefully it's not that expensive by then, $3.34 for diesel. Looking for a motion for 12.1.
So moved, Negrini.
Mr. Greenie, thank you. So we have a second?
Martin.
Mr. Martin, beat you out, sorry. Mr. Martin, second, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Child Care, 13.1, request approval to allow Dr. Stacy Stout to sign e-grants with the Pennsylvania Department of Education. Looking for a motion for 13.1.
Casper?
Mrs. Casper, thank you. Dr. Kennedy, second. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
We have no votes on the policies, first and second readings. They're available on board docs, and any changes are shown in either red or green for ease of everyone's reading the policies. Miscellaneous enrollment report, as of May 12th, 2022, 6,342 students, which is a decrease of 6 students from the previous report on April 12th. And committee reports. BCTC, Mrs. Casper.
Yes, no, I have no report. Our next meeting is at the end of this month. And
Thank you.
for student services,
Yep.
I'll just go into that. Our meeting was canceled on May 4th. I believe our next meeting is June 1st.
Okay, thank you. And a reminder that all of our committee information is on the website, including most committees have links to their minutes from each meeting. BCIU, Dr. Kennedy.
The next BCIU meeting is this Thursday, and we have another curriculum meeting at the end of this month.
Okay, thank you. Berks EIT, Mrs. Schlossman. Thank you. Extracurricular Committee. At the Extracurricular Committee this past Monday, oof, that was a long week, we discussed the extracurricular budget, so I guess it's budget season, and that is also available in our minutes for the Extracurricular Committee on our website. And some pieces I found interesting is, I know that the district has been coming up with some creative ways to increase revenue with sports. That's something that is an easy revenue stream. And some of the athletic events really do bring in a good amount of money, whether it's just tickets to get into the event or food services, vending. There are, obviously, they vary, but I think the top two were probably football and basketball. So I know that we are looking at seeing how we could expand revenue while also making sure that our teams are as staffed as possible, just to try and get a better balance. And I know that something else that we've discussed in the past with the activity fee is also factored into that. So I encourage people to take a look at all of the offerings that we provide for our students under the extracurricular budget. It's definitely more than I had previously thought. Obviously, you think about sports right off the bat, but we also have co-curriculars and clubs that are also provided, especially at the secondary level. And that's my report. Facilities Committee, Mr. Case.
Thank you. First off, I just want to start off with thanking Mr. Simcox and his team for knocking it out of the park and helping all the students for a fantastic prom evening. It's a lot of work that happens for the students, and also needing a whole bunch of items from the facilities team, so thank you. There was a meeting on May 3rd for facilities, and some of the things that, topics that came up were the getting in, well, I'll just start off with some documents came back from Spring Township for official approvals for the parade and the fireworks, along with the graduation ceremony, which is a fantastic thing. And Mr. Simcox and his team, they're planning summer projects, and they're also interviewing some students for some of the summer positions. One of the situations that we talked about at the meeting is the facilities department is 11 folks short from employee perspective. So the entire team, and we had to talk as a board with regard to possibly aligning our pay for custodial positions and also other facility positions, because we're losing really good people to other districts and also the private sector. Education's education, but we're playing in an unlevel playing field there, so we may need to examine that further. Because as more and more people leave, the people that remain are doing primarily most of the work. Some other things, installing new basketball poles, nets, and ceiling and stripping at Southern and Cornwall next week. The gym sound system for the high school has been approved, and that'll be installed this summer. One of the things I want to just dovetail on what Dr. Trickett was talking about with revisiting the Phase 1, even though that was rejected, that did get brought up late in the meeting, and we do want to maintain traction for those projects. And it may be for taking a step back and rethinking this. I think everyone believes that the Taj Mahal was sort of being presented, and $50-something million at the end of the price tag was way too high. So we should take a look and say, should we really be connecting the buildings? Is that really going to improve safety? Let's take a look at that. That was a large cost of the project. If we would happen to take connecting the buildings and moving the administration offices from that project, we could save potentially $20 million. And I would recommend that we maybe take a look at this as a budget first and say, hey, let's take some, a bucket for portions of the project for, say, the auditorium, and try and stick within that budget. Or with the baseball fields, it seems like if we would do an Owls type of field and get back to grass and get the team back to the high school, we don't necessarily have to do turf. But let's take a look at some sensible approaches to getting that particular, both of those projects maybe to the low $30 million range, and then having an additional $10 million for the elementary school or something of that manner for future projects. But let's take a step back and start having other conversations to try and figure out what options are on the table instead of trying to do everything. Anyway, so more to come on that, and we should have some conversations between now and the summer. We shouldn't lose traction. Most of us were with kids in the district that are involved in orchestra or music. We were at the high school this week, and looking around, it has been way too many years that our auditorium is in dire need of an update, and also to accommodate the growing populations, we need to add more seating, and there must be a way to get more seats in that auditorium and expand it with leaving possibly the same footprint that we have today and doing some more sensible things. So that's my report. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Case.
Anyone can comment, by the way, after that, even though it's my committee report. Go ahead. Or wait till the end. Mike.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Case. Finance Committee, Mr. Negrini.
Our next meeting is June 6th at 4:30.
Thank you. Legislative, Mr. Martin.
The legislators are on break until after the election. They'll return next week. A couple things have cropped up, as Christine mentioned, that the governor wanted to give us a lot of money, and of course that makes great news, but there's a lot of people pulling for that money. I mean, I'm not sure where it's going to land, but everybody has their hands out trying to get a piece of this funding that the government, the excess revenues that the state has, they're trying to find a home for. I'm still hopefully they do the sales tax forgiveness for 2 months, and I go buy a new car, but that'd be selfish. But anyway, there is a big problem now with the stock market, turning backwards. Pensions come back up into the legislative branches in the government because right now we've lost about $3 billion in revenues or projected revenues for the pensions, and now we're about 55% funded, so that leaves an unfunded balance of about $28.5 billion, and there's some push that there's got to be a way to improve on the deficit or bring down that $28.5 billion, and there's a couple of things being floated around. None of them are good for the taxpayers, but there's great concern that this keeps compiling itself, and it needs to end because it keeps being unfunded. It's almost like it compounds itself. So I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it's 55% funded, which isn't going to work. If the market continues in the wrong direction, that just even compounds that issue. So I'm not sure, like I said, I'm just giving you a heads up that there's talk about raising a special tax to cover that. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mr. Hart, Human Resources.
No report.
Public Relations, Mrs. Troutman.
Thank you. I just have a couple of items. First, we want to congratulate Kelly Hartman for receiving her Reading Area Community College Associate's degree. What's really cool is Kelly is actually a current junior here at Wilson High School, and she's already met all the graduation requirements for an associate's degree through RAC in psychology. Kelly began taking dual enrollment and early admissions courses during her sophomore year here at Wilson. Her college-level courses at Wilson High School included Spanish, literature, pre-calculus, and art, and of course that's in addition to all the courses she took on her own. So this is an amazing achievement and certainly something we hope to see many more students at Wilson take advantage of. Our middle schools took the learning outside the classroom this past week as students at both Southern and West participated in Field and Stream Day. The event utilized the grounds at West Middle School to expose students to a variety of great activities while reinforcing lessons they have learned throughout their time in middle school. It was great to see our kids outside enjoying some new experiences with their classmates, and it didn't hurt that the weather was absolutely beautiful. So we want to thank all of the staff and volunteers who made this amazing experience possible. And then finally, since this is our last board meeting before graduation for the class of 2022, we wanted to share with our community that we will once again be celebrating the graduating class with a community parade and fireworks display. The parade will follow the same route as last year and will begin at 6 p.m. on Friday, June 3rd. We do have a rain date of June 4th. The students will then make their way to Gursky Stadium for their graduation ceremony. Graduates will receive tickets to the event, but it will also be live streamed for our community to watch. And then following the ceremony, we will have a fireworks display beginning at approximately 9:15 p.m. There is a custom website that has been developed for the class of 2022 events, and you can find that link on the home page of the high school website. We can't wait to celebrate all that these graduates have accomplished and cannot wait until June 3rd. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Troutman. Education Foundation, Mr. Case.
Sure, thank you. Just a couple of quick notes of public service announcement for the 2022 summer learning camps that are Monday through Thursday between June 14th through July 28th for the summer. That's sponsored by the Ed Foundation. There's information on our website. You can register. Slots are limited, so it's a first come, first serve, and it's for kids entering first through fifth grade. So you can check that out on our school website. There's a Ed Foundation or I've been told not to say Ed Foundation because I'm Ed, but there's an Education Foundation meeting this Friday at 7:30. And just a note for future dates coming up. Community Days are at the Fight and Phils is August 28th, and please plan for the Bulldog Bash September 17th next school year. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Technology Committee, Mr. McCray.
No report.
Student Outreach, Ms. Maddie Negrini.
First of all, there's been a lot of excitement in our school the past couple of weeks with the spring sports teams. There have been several student athletes that have participated in postseason matches and games, and there have been numerous county final games and meets appearances, including a county championship win for the men's lacrosse team and the women's track and field team this past week, which is really exciting. As the end of the year quickly approaches, we have a lot of fun activities for the student body to participate in, especially with the senior class. There is a new tradition of a senior sunrise that has been founded this year, in which on Wednesday, all the senior class will be going to Gursky Stadium at 5:15 a.m., and we'll watch the sunrise together, drink some coffee, and make some really good memories. We also are coming to the conclusion of our student body Color Wars competition. At the end of next week, there's going to be a huge activity day in which there are final games and challenges that the student body can compete against one another. There's going to be an unveiling of the champion team, and it's also a decision day for the graduating class of 2022. And then lastly, with this being my final board meeting, I just wanted to take the time to thank the Wilson School Board, especially Dr. Faithley, Dr. Trickett, Mrs. Cucker, and Mr. Hart. This experience has been both a positive and a very informative one with the unique nature of this year. But I've loved every minute of it. You guys have all been super warm and supportive, and I'm very grateful. So thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. And being that it is your last meeting, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, Maddie Negrini, for serving as our student representative this past school year. Maddie has done a tremendous job representing her peers to both the board and the community. In addition to her position, all right, everybody ready? In addition to her position as our student representative, Maddie serves as student government president, class secretary, mini-thon captain. She's a member of Link Crew, National Honor Society, orchestra, and swimming and water polo teams. In the fall, Maddie will be attending University of Vermont to major in psychology. And we want to thank you for your service to our school and the entire Wilson community, and congratulations on your graduation. We will be officially honoring Maddie with the Wilson School Board Scholarship at the Academic Award Ceremony on Thursday, May 26th. So thank you for working with all of us and representing the student class of 2022. Thanks. Mr. Maravich.
No report. Do you want me to truncate the rules?
Yes, please.
Okay. Rules of public participation. Individuals attending the meeting are expected to conduct themselves in a responsible, respectful manner that does not disrupt the meeting. Public comment is not question answer, but instead an opportunity to offer matters, comment on matters that are or may come before the board. All comments must be directed to board as a body and not to any individual. Individuals may not approach the board tables. The comment period is 3 minutes. I'll provide a warning at 1 minute. Any person making any threats of violence may be removed from the meeting or cited by local police.
Thank you. First is Kelly, okay, no, I apologize, sometimes the handwriting, Ayton, resizing plan.
So I realize I'm a little late to the party with the resizing plan. I only found out about this actually when it happened. So my son currently goes to Green Valley. He will be transitioning to Shiloh next year. I just want to give you a few numbers that will be affected by this resizing plan. So in third grade, which is what my son is currently in, there are 93 students at Green Valley, which are 4 classes, approximately 23 students per class. First and second grade are 88 students, 4 classes, 22 students per class. And kindergarten, although I do agree that is high, it's 105 students, 5 classes, approximately 21 students per class. Or if you size it down to 4 classes, it would be 26 students per class. At the parent forum, we were informed that the schools were built based on a 3 to 4 class per grade. And then just a reminder that the resizing plan slideshow on slide 3, bullet point 5 states the classes would remain at or near our recommended number of students at the elementary schools, which would be 20 for kindergarten through first, 22 for second and third,
and then 24 for 4th to 5th, which all grades that are affected currently fall under that, with the exception of kindergarten. And this is also in anticipation for the Green Valley community growing with the lots that are currently sold and will be renovated. So my confusion, I guess, with this plan is that this is anticipated, and I don't understand why these students can't stay where they're currently established until these plans go into effect. The students going into kindergarten, or any students moving into our neighborhood, which is affected, could then go to Shiloh, and then the Green Valley students that are currently at Green Valley could stay where they are located. The reason for this is because why would we want to uproot our kids
1 minute.
and move them to a different school when they're established with friends? They love their school, they love their community, and we are making an unnecessary change to their education by moving them to a different school. I have nothing against Shiloh, I'm sure it's a great school. However, my son is one of two of his group of friends that are moving, so he's going to have one friend at Shiloh. And I just feel like he would be starting over in his education with moving him to a different school at this point. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your concerns. Next, Jack Woods, Audition.
Hello, I am Jack Woods. I am a senior. I was a competitive swimmer for 8 years and stopped to pursue the arts in 9th grade. This fall, I am attending Point Park University to pursue a BFA in theater arts directing under their Conservatory of Performing Arts. I have performed in our auditorium since my first production with the high school as Wally Webb in Thornton Wilder's Our Town, up to the senior acting and directing course, which I took as a junior and directed my first production and beyond. I have estimated to have spent 1,500 plus hours within the auditorium. I have stayed late nights helping clean and add a fresh coat of paint over the stage when needed. Without the experience I gained, whether it be performing on stage or working backstage, I truly don't believe I would be where I am today. I'm here today to address the community. When I hear people who don't know our experience talk about that experience as if it's invalid, it hurts. The auditorium itself is home to multiple study halls, second period high school orchestra, soon to be the rest of the theater courses offered, concerts, performances, assemblies, and staff development activities. I personally see that as a pretty integral and educational part of our district. I have been very thankful for my experience here and for the support of the arts, but having to work in the auditorium is, to be honest, disheartening. I feel I am quite knowledgeable of the auditorium and the struggles that our directors, Ms. Lennon, and other very talented arts faculty, students, and I have faced. For example, seats being unavailable to guests due to them being broken, one of the backstage dressing rooms being rendered useless for about 2 years due to a leak and consistent smell of mold, and a lack of communication and organization. For Mrs. Kuhn, classes and gatherings have been scheduled during her respected classes time in the auditorium. On top of that, we in the second period orchestra waste about 20 minutes of what could be class time because our instructor does not have a respected space to use for instructional time other than the auditorium. According to Data USA, there are over 2.2 million people who currently work within theater arts, and it also goes on to say that the number of people receiving diplomas in related fields is up by 22.7%. All in all, it should be noted that every single process applied and learned in a theater, performing, and visual arts class can be applied to your everyday life. Communication, leadership, empathy, respect, connection, growth, and dedication. These are things that I needed to get into school and have gotten me personally farther than my GPA. I needed time to learn experiences in auditioning, public speaking, and the interview process. So yes, education will forever be your ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, but don't discredit do-re-mi, creativity, analysis, theory, belief, and suspension of disbelief, facts and opinions, and the human experience. The arts, what we present, and what we create in that auditorium is as much of an integral part to our education as any other room and field in this district. I, as a senior, want to leave something behind I can be proud of. It is important to the community that stands before you all, and on a broader scale, our future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Julia Eck, Auditorium Renovation.
Good evening. My name is Julia Eck. I'm a senior and the current student treasurer of the Wilson Theater Company. Since you've already gotten to hear from a student who will be pursuing the arts as a career, I wanted to speak on the educational value of the arts as an upcoming psychology major. I have no plans to pursue a career in the arts. However, the lessons I have learned inside our very own auditorium are just as impactful as anything I've learned in classes at Wilson. I have learned how to problem solve, to lead, to set goals, to push myself outside of my comfort zone, and most importantly, to communicate and build relationships. Even though the community only gets the opportunity to see our final product on stage, the amount of hours spent rehearsing to make art that we love has shaped us to be the people we are today. The auditorium serves as a safe space and a home atmosphere for so many students at Wilson, and is used for countless events other than just our productions. Not only would an auditorium renovation be very beneficial for the students here at Wilson, but it would also benefit the community who support the arts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Ashley Widener, renovation.
My name is Ashley Widener, and I am currently a senior here at Wilson. I'm lucky enough to serve as the president of the Wilson Theater Company this year, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the importance of our auditorium. I have spent countless hours in this auditorium, so much that it's a second home to me. Almost every school in the district utilizes our auditorium, from the elementary school band concerts to the middle school choir performances and the high school music programs. This auditorium is essential to the Wilson community, and it is severely lacking in many aspects. If you attend a play or a musical in any other school in Berks County, they have new auditoriums with breathtaking lighting systems, comfortable seating, and a clean and crisp space to perform their shows. We have an auditorium that has not been updated since before my mother graduated from Wilson in 1992. I have learned so much from my experiences working on stage and backstage in this school, everything from teamwork to leadership skills, things I can use for the rest of my life to better me in my education. While I'm not pursuing the theater arts in college, I have learned countless lessons and skills that I could not do without. I believe that the auditorium provides such a safe space for so many students here at Wilson, and I am so thankful that it exists, but I would absolutely love to see new changes made to better the space. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Emily Lieboff, renovation.
Good evening. My name is Emily Lieboff, and I'm in 9th grade here at Wilson High School. I'm the freshman representative for both the Wilson Theater Company and the high school choir. I am a member of concert choir, treble choir, and select choir, and performed in the spring musical Guys and Dolls and the senior-directed one-act play festival. I have been performing since the age of 5 in numerous community theater and professional productions, and I plan to pursue a career in musical theater. Being involved in theater for the past 10 years has given me the opportunity to perform in a multitude of venues and attend performances in support of my friends in many other school districts, and tonight I am here to tell you, it's time. It's time to make renovating Wilson High School's auditorium and music facilities a priority. As you probably know, in April, Wilson was named one of the best communities for music education, and it is time to upgrade our facilities so that Wilson music performances will be enhanced rather than limited. I have attended many theater productions in schools in Berks County and surrounding counties. Many of them now have performing arts centers with up-to-date facilities and sound and lighting equipment. Something that you are probably not aware of is that during the tech week of the recent senior-directed one-act plays, we experienced technical difficulties for several days, and we had no idea when or even if they would be fixed in time for the 3-day festival performances. It's time to make renovating Wilson High School's auditorium and music facilities a priority. Our auditorium is among the most used facilities in the entire district. Elementary schools use it for their seasonal concerts. The high school uses it for theater productions, band, chorus, orchestra concerts, and award ceremonies. These events are attended by parents, grandparents, additional family members, friends, and other district residents. It is also used during the school day for theater classes, orchestra rehearsals, and assemblies. Even school board meetings have been held in the auditorium when you needed the space for a large audience. Anyone who does not realize how outdated our facility is should visit other schools in the area and compare. The choir and band rooms are severely outdated, and the orchestra does not even have its own room in which to rehearse. It's time to give the students involved in these music programs updated facilities that allow them to thrive. Literally thousands of students involved in music and theater programs have watched and waited as many other parts of the high school campus have been renovated, upgraded, and in some cases completely redesigned, while our auditorium and music facilities have been deteriorating for decades. It's time to make renovating Wilson High School's auditorium and music facilities a priority. It's time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Jessica Hernandez, Performing Arts Center.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Hernandez, and I'm the president of the Wilson Music Promoters, a Wilson parent and Wilson alumni. I'm here tonight, first of all, to thank you for everything you've done the last 2 years. I know, board member to board member, how difficult navigating through this has been. So for that, you have my respect and appreciation. I'm here just to go over the Performing Arts Center project, which I disagree with some that they think it is a want rather than a need. It's not just because we want something shiny and new. It is for the safety of all of our music children and theater children in this district. Currently, all of our marching band students and volunteers have to push very heavy instruments, large speakers, and props up a very giant hill in order to store them properly. While doing so, I have witnessed so many cars drive through the band area at very high speeds, and sometimes the said children almost get hit by the vehicles. Currently, there is no way to put any other type of caution out or to put any more communications out in slowing anyone down. Having a new performing arts center that's connected would make it so much safer for our children in order to do their activities without the fear of getting hit by a car. The band room, choir room, and the musical equipment rooms all are the exact same ones since I was in high school over 20 years ago. There have been hardly any updates, and these rooms are falling apart. This group of students brings so much light and happiness to this district as we support so many of our fellow students, programs, and sports in celebrating all their victories. That is why we are coming here tonight to ask for a victory of our own so that we can go ahead and have future generations have a safer way of performing, moving items, and a larger space to learn and entertain you all. I really hope that you all consider this and reconfigure any type of plans in order for something to go through for these students who make up a very large portion of the student body, not just in the high school, but the middle schools and elementary schools as well. And for last, I am super proud of every single music and theater student in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Todd Shorel, to say thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you for a moment. Since the end of the school year is upon us, I wanted to stop for a moment and simply say thank you and appreciate this board. I sit on a few boards myself, and I can tell you I know how difficult it can be to be up there receiving feedback, to have these meetings. And I want to just say I appreciate how you've led this school district through the pandemic. I appreciate how you welcome feedback and involve the community in participation through this process. I want to say thank you for keeping our children safe and listening to the advice of doctors and science through the pandemic with your masking policies and making difficult decisions that I'm sure weren't always popular. I want to also appreciate the principal for my children's school. I have twins in Whitfield, and I want to appreciate Principal Joyner for creating an outstanding culture at that school that you can feel if you spend a day there. I've had the opportunity to do Dog's Dad's program there 4 out of 5 years. I have to say, it's an unbelievable experience to spend a day in the school. Special education is not an easy cost or decision, I'm sure. But if you get an opportunity to spend an hour in a special education classroom, you can really appreciate just how difficult that role and those positions are to our school. I have to say, Principal Joyner has done an amazing job creating a culture at Whitfield. She's approachable not only to the parents of students, but also to the students themselves. and I know both of my children look up to the teachers and staff at that school. And lastly, I want to appreciate the community who participates respectfully from this stand and in discussions outside this room. It's our job as a community to appropriately respect these board members who give their time to listen to our feedback and make difficult decisions. So let us show them our tact and professionalism, both from this podium, but also as you encounter the board members in public. Please do so from this podium without sarcasm and appropriately show the respect this board deserves. Lastly, to the parents and teachers in the community in general, the students who spoke tonight, I appreciate you. This is a community. It is a social obligation that we have to make everyone better, and I appreciate what we're building here. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Fick, Auditorium Performing Arts Center.
Sorry if I talk fast. I've got a lot packed into 3 minutes, and I'm adding on now. Students, phenomenal job. First off, thank you for your time, and thank you for your commitment to our community. Tonight, obviously, many of us are here to talk about the need for a new auditorium and performing arts center. Obviously, you made a difficult decision tonight, passing a budget, and I know none of you took that responsibility lightly. It is not our intent to be fiscally irresponsible. Our goal tonight is to reinforce the idea that a new auditorium and performing arts center is needed here at Wilson as soon as it can be completed in a fiscally responsible manner. And to be fully transparent, yes, I have a son that is part of this department, and no, he will not benefit from any renovations that you make. He'll be graduated by that time. But however, I'm here advocating for those students in that department because it's the right thing to do. Before I go any further, please understand I am completely in agreement with the administration, board, and community that we must also address the overcrowding in elementary schools. If building a new elementary or expanding on those schools is the best way to do it, I'm behind it. It has to be done. However, I do not want the district to lose sight of its vision for Wilson's performing arts. We have one of the premier art, music, and theater programs in the region. Our students consistently win awards for their work, and the concerts and shows they produce are second to none. And they do all of this in classrooms and in an auditorium that are nowhere near the accommodations they need and deserve. At the April 19th board meeting, Mr. Negrini mentioned that in 1999, a major renovation to the auditorium, similar to the one that was part of that Phase 1 project, was explored. Ultimately, that project never happened. Since that time, a new gym and phys ed facility was built, Gursky Stadium upgraded, George Mack Field built, and Snyder and Auditorium has been upgraded or rebuilt. I personally have directly benefited from those projects as a coach, and I can say they were needed and necessary. Everyone agrees on that. However, it's now over 20 years since the last major renovation was discussed, and we still have the same auditorium and music wing. In fact, it's the same one that I sat in when I graduated in 1991. And I think you'll agree with me that the time has come for the district to stand behind their words and take the action to support the arts. And none of this is meant to imply that you don't support the arts.
1 minute.
I personally know a lot of you. I know you support the arts, but it's just been words for those students for over 20 years. Everyone says they support it, but we haven't had any action. We have an opportunity, and all we're asking at this time is that take that time, as was just noted by Mr. Case, to start to plan so that when things get back to normal, you can move forward. And as that planning moves forward, I strongly encourage you to continue to seek out information from faculty members, specifically Ms. Lennon, Mrs. Fredericks, and Mrs. Kuhn, as well as our new band instructor, Mr. Garcia. They know what is needed and what is best to create a learning environment that will not only benefit those students, but enrich our community. And on top of that, just adding in here, I know what was proposed originally might have been the Taj Mahal, but if that auditorium was built back in the 70s and we haven't done anything to it, those kids deserve a Taj Mahal. They should get everything that they deserve on that. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Michael Hassan, Fine Arts.
I hate this. Truly hate it.
to just get me up here to do this. I hate this. That's why I don't, anyway. Thank you so much for being up here, all of you. You have a thankless job. I don't want it. Don't nominate me. Yeah, this room is gorgeous. I propose that you trade with your band students and have your board meetings in the band room. And I challenge you all to turn the light switch on in the band room. It is a circuit breaker. Your sound system is better than the sound system in our auditorium. It's better than the sound system in our band room. It's better than the sound system in our chorus room. Your projector, geez Louise, I almost just cursed. It's beautiful. That is not the same quality that our students have to look at, that our board members can attest to who are at the presentations when our new, for the interview process of our new band director. This room is gorgeous. Please trade with our band and chorus students who have to use it every single day. As far as connecting the schools, go out and see what it's like during Whitfield drop-off between periods 1 and 2 as your students change rooms and locations. It's a real-life Frogger situation between cars and students. Close the driveway coming down. It's a traffic nightmare, but it's Frogger also currently. The room that we currently store our stringed instruments in leaks. That's not healthy for stringed instruments. I can attest to that as I was here painting speakers last year, and it was raining in the room as we were painting new speaker carts. My son calls me a week ago and says, hey, Dad, can you come up and help us move our percussion equipment up to the stage? We can't carry it up the steps. Sure, Connor, I'll be there. So I helped them carry 250, 300-pound percussion equipment up steps so they could perform for our community. It's despicable. It's despicable. He says to me, they don't care, Dad. Well, they don't care. The community doesn't care. This is never going to happen. We're never going to get the Taj Mahal. I hope you build the Taj Mahal. We can charge the 2 million tourists that come every year, admissions to see it. I take offense to comments like that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That is the end of public participation. Is there any other business from the board? Mr. Martin.
Oh, yes. This is kind of like a self-reporting that I think was done not in any spite, but at our last board meeting, we did not put out the agenda within the 24-hour period, and it was brought to my attention by 2 people that we violated that. I don't know what that means, but I'm just letting you know that there was no intention to deceive any of the public. And I'm not sure what that means, if we violated anything, but because those emails were sent to me, I just wanted to bring it up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martin. Any other new business from the board?
I just want to make a couple of comments. I appreciate everyone's comments about the auditorium. I just want to let you know, I've actually participated in 2 Wilson Summer Theater projects as an adult. Just in general, with my life, I have learned more outside of the classroom than inside of the classroom. There are so many things that I've learned, similar to what the great students that just talked about in theater, in those productions. Watch an entire production go from, you think, how are we going to go on the next night? We are not ready, to people pulling together and digging deep and actually putting something special together. That next night is quite an amazing thing. So I've lived it. I've been behind the theater in the rooms in the back, and I get it. There's a lot of people up here that get it. $50 million, whether you want to be offended by the Taj Mahal comment or not, is a lot of money. And to be fiscally responsible, we're just asking to take a step back and sort of revisit and replan and adjust of what we want to do here for a reasonable amount of money. So I appreciate everyone coming out. We do not want to lose steam on this. We want to stay motivated to build something while we have this opportunity and we have the funds available to put something in place. So again, thank you for everyone for coming out, and from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate it. I love theater. It's what makes the world go round at times. And again, the classroom is not the only place you learn in life, and it's sometimes what brings people to school and gives them something happy to be a part of and wake up in the morning to get to. Whether that's auto mechanics, whether that's BCTC, whether that's theater, something drives everybody, so we can do better in that area. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Any other comments?
I would just second what Mr. Case said. I think we are truly blessed to have many talented individuals at Wilson, including those in the back of the room. So thank you for taking the time to be here today. Theater is a large part of my daughter's lives at Southern. And so in case you're free, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they're performing Annie. I know a couple of the actresses. They're pretty good. But I fully agree with Mr. Case that we've kind of kicked this can down the road, unfortunately, longer than it should have. And I do agree that it's time to do something much sooner than later. So I appreciate the additional effort the board's going to put in over the next coming weeks, months, what there may be, to make sure we put this at the top of our priority list. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Dr. Trickett?
Yeah, just sitting here in this seat is a little bit different than sitting in the other seat. And I feel that it's imperative that I just make a comment on the 5 students that spoke tonight at the board, starting with Maddie here beside me, her leadership and her grace, just representing the student body here at Wilson, which is approaching 2,100 students strong. What a challenging responsibility that you have to sit here every day and be a part of such an important process. And then listening to Jack, Julia, Ashley, and Emily, a 9th grader in our high school, is standing up here before you passionately, all 4 of them speaking about things that they believe so much in and about and for. It just gives me a lot of hope and re-energizes me as we close out this school year and prepare for next school year, that this community, the teachers we have, the staff, this board, the work that we do, it is making a difference. And it's producing phenomenal young people who are going to move forward to make this world a better place. So to the parents that are here supporting those children as well, thank you. We appreciate all your support, but especially tonight for the kids. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Trickett. And not to one-up the students that came up and said that the auditorium hasn't changed since their parents graduated in 91. I don't think the auditorium has changed since my mom graduated in 77. So not to play a numbers game. But I have one last thing to say before we close out the meeting. In regards to our superintendent search, we have a mini update. We've conducted interviews and are on schedule to make an official appointment at our June 6th meeting. So the community should keep an eye out for an interim communication between now and then, because it's 3 weeks away, just the way the calendar works out. Keep an eye out for the interim communication regarding the board selection. So thank you for that. And do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Mr. Schneider, thank you. Meeting adjourned.